Somewhere in the ancient world, a man has been walking since sunrise, and he has not eaten anything all day. He may not eat tomorrow either. His body is not searching for flavor or comfort or pleasure. It is searching for one thing only: energy that will keep him alive one more day. And when he finally finds it, something fires inside his brain that we still carry with us, thousands of generations later. This is the story of why humans became obsessed with food. Not because our ancestors were greedy, but because for almost the entire history of our species, food was never guaranteed. To understand what that world felt like, you have to erase everything you know about eating. There was no fridge, no market, no stored grain, no meal waiting at a fixed hour of the day. There was only the land, the season, the weather, the luck, and the effort. And the land was rarely generous. Most days, food was not sitting in one place waiting to be taken. It was scattered across miles, hidden underground, buried in shells, hanging out of reach, or moving on four fast legs. Some of it was defended by thorns, some by height, some by distance, and some by teeth. A gatherer might walk for hours and come back with roots, seeds, and a few handfuls of berries. A hunter might follow tracks all day and return with nothing at all. Failure was not the exception. Failure was the pattern, and hunger was simply part of being alive. In a world like that, the brain had to decide what mattered most. It decided that food mattered more than almost anything else, because the human who ignored food died, and the human who was obsessed with food survived long enough to have children. And those children inherited the obsession. So evolution built something inside us that was never designed to be gentle. It built a reward system, and that system had a very loud voice. When an ancient human found something rich in energy, the brain did not respond quietly. It responded with something close to joy. Three things in particular set off that response: fat, sugar, and salt. In the ancient world, these were rare, precious, and almost impossible to overeat. Fat meant survival through cold nights and empty weeks. Sugar meant fast fuel for a body that was always moving. Salt allowed the body to hold water and keep working under a brutal sun. So the brain learned one simple rule that made perfect sense at the time. When you find these, take as much as you possibly can, because you may never find them again. Think about what honey meant to an ancient human. It was concentrated sugar, hidden inside a tree, guarded by thousands of stinging insects. People climbed dangerous heights to reach it. They burned smoke to drive the bees away. They were stung again and again, and they came back anyway. They did not do this because they were addicted to sweetness. They did it because sweetness was worth the pain. There was no such thing as too much honey. There was only the question of how much you could carry before the bees drove you off. The same logic applied to fat. When a hunting group finally brought down a large animal, they did not eat politely or carefully. They ate quickly and enormously, and they went for the fattiest parts first, especially the organs and the marrow hidden inside the bones. They cracked those bones open with stones just to reach it. This was not simple hunger, it was intelligence. Meat rots quickly, other predators were always circling, and tomorrow might bring nothing at all. In a world without storage, the safest place to store food was inside your own body. This is the part that modern people misunderstand about overeating. Ancient humans did not overeat because they were weak or undisciplined. They overate because overeating was the strategy. The body was built to take in far more than it needed whenever abundance appeared, and to turn the surplus into fat. And that fat was never a flaw. It was a savings account. It carried a group through the dry season and through the failed hunt. It carried a mother through pregnancy when food was scarce. It carried the sick through fever when they could not walk out and find anything for themselves. Humans store fat more easily than almost any other animal our size, and that is not an accident. It is a survival strategy written directly into the body. Feast, then famine. Find, then wait. Fill, then empty. The entire human system was built around a rhythm that the modern world has quietly erased, and the craving was the engine that made the whole thing work. A craving is not a mistake or a weakness. A craving is a command. It is the ancient brain saying that this is important. Go and get it now. Do not hesitate, and do not think it over. That command saved countless lives. The human who felt a powerful pull toward calories walked farther, climbed higher, endured more stings, and dug longer into the hard ground. The human who felt nothing stayed comfortably by the fire, and the one who stayed by the fire did not always survive the season. But food did something else to ancient humans that went far beyond the individual body. It bound them to each other. Because a single person could not reliably find enough. The hunt failed too often, and the gathering was too unpredictable, so they shared. Meat was divided among the group. Roots and berries were passed around the fire. Children were fed first, and then the ones too old to travel far. Sharing food was not only kindness, it was the oldest form of insurance that humans ever invented. You feed me today when I have nothing, and I feed you tomorrow when you have nothing, and together the group becomes a kind of living storehouse that no single body could ever be. This is why food still sits at the center of human life. It is why we eat together, why we celebrate with feasts, and why offering someone food still feels like a quiet form of love. That instinct is one of the oldest agreements our species ever made with itself. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Fire. When ancient humans learned to cook, food became easier to chew, easier to digest, and far richer in usable energy. A raw root might take hours of chewing for very little return, while a cooked one surrendered its energy almost immediately. Cooking was like unlocking calories that had always been there, but were locked behind effort. It gave humans more fuel for less work, and with more fuel available, the human brain could afford to grow larger and hungrier than any brain before it. But cooking also did something unexpected. It made food genuinely appealing. Heat released smells that traveled across a camp. Fat sizzled and dripped. Hard textures softened into something pleasurable. The brain slowly learned that certain smells meant a reward was coming, and for the first time, humans were not only eating in order to survive. They were beginning to want. Even so, in the ancient world, wanting always had a limit, because desire had to fight against reality. You could want honey, but the bees were still up there waiting. You could want meat, but the animals still had to be tracked and killed. You could want more of anything, but the land decided how much existed. Effort stood permanently between craving and calories, and that gap kept the entire system honest. Then, slowly, that gap began to close. Farming arrived, and with it came storage. Grain-filled containers, and animals stayed close to home. For the first time in the human story, food waited for people instead of people waiting for food. The ancient rhythm of feast and famine began to weaken, and in the last 100 years, it broke apart completely. Sugar was extracted and concentrated far beyond anything found in nature. Fat was refined and multiplied. Salt was poured into almost everything. The three rarest signals of the ancient world became the three most common ingredients of the modern one. And the brain still reacts exactly as it always did. It still shouts that this is rare and valuable, that you should take everything while it lasts. But nothing is rare anymore. The honey no longer has to be climbed for. The marrow no longer has to be cracked out of bone. The animal no longer has to be tracked across a valley for a full day. The effort has vanished, but the reward has stayed, and a system built entirely for scarcity now lives inside a world of endless abundance. This is why food can feel almost impossible to resist. Not because something inside you is broken, but because something inside you is still working exactly as it was designed to work. The ancient human who could not stop thinking about food was the ancient human who survived, and you are here because of that obsession. Your ancestors walked all day for a handful of berries. They endured stings for a single comb of honey. They cracked open bones with stones to reach the last of the fat. They ate everything they could find because the next meal was never promised to anyone. They were not weak, and neither are you. They were simply winning a game whose rules have now completely changed. We did not evolve to resist food. We evolved to chase it. And somewhere underneath every craving you have ever had, an ancient human is still walking across an empty landscape, still searching, still certain that this might be the last good thing he finds before the hunger returns.